Glad you could join us today on Earthfile. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayola Kasim. World Mangrove Day is celebrated each year around the world on July 26th. On that day, many reflect on the importance of this natural resource. Mangrove forests are among the most powerful nature-based solutions to climate change. But with 67% of mangrove lost or degraded to date, and an additional 1% being lost each year, they are at a risk of being destroyed altogether. Without mangroves, 39% more people will be flooded annually, and flood damage will increase by more than 16% and $82 billion. The question is, will mangroves be able to survive the impact of human activities? Well, we'll find out today on the program. Do stay with us. There are many more questions about the mangroves. How diverse are they? How do their components work? What threats do they face? And how can we conserve them? Scientists all around the world have been searching for answers to these and other urgent questions. Mangroves grow in sheltered tropical and subtropical coastal areas across the globe. In general, this is an area between latitudes of 25 degrees north and 25 degrees south. However, geographical limits are highly variable depending upon the area of the world and local climates. They cover between roughly 53,000 and 77,000 square miles globally, acting as a bridge connecting the land and sea. Mangrove forests cover over 3.2 million hectares on the African continent. That is about 19% of global coverage. They are distributed in three major coastal sections, which are Western Atlantic, that is about 1.5 million hectares, taking 37% of the total share. Central Atlantic, that is around 0.4 million hectares, and Eastern Indian Ocean, which is 1.2 million hectares of the coast of Africa. Nigeria has the largest mangroves in Africa, located in the Niger Delta, with up to 0.8 million hectares of mangrove stands in this area, and plays a critical role in supporting the region's rich wildlife.
The mangroves are one of the most essential links in the life support ecosystem chain of this miraculously made planet. Mangroves are so important, apart from the obvious thing of, just being there and being a place where so many different animals and plant species thrive and survive. They're like a nest for sea species to come and lay their eggs and to come and proliferate. They are wonderful drainage systems. When you have floods, you have too much water, it just sucks it all up. They filtrate the water, they bring back pure water. They are just incredible. And one of the more important roles, which is sometimes overlooked, is that they are carbon sequesters. So they help to fight against climate change. Mangroves are important.
The area of the mangrove ecosystem, which comprises of about 35% of the total cover for West Africa, spans between 997,000 hectares to 105,339 hectares, of which 480,000 hectares is planted. Mangrove swamps in Nigeria are found in 9 of the 36 states stretching along the entire coast, and are either partially or totally flooded throughout the year, with plant community that survive in marine and brackish habitats replaced further inland by freshwater swamp forests. Experts say the Niger Delta region harbors one of the world's largest contiguous block of mangrove forests, characterized by rich biodiversity, highly diverse and productive ecosystems, and good agricultural land and excellent fisheries.
They hold the secret to the future economic security of the world. The mangrove ecosystem, apart from providing erosion control support to coastal areas, are the major breeding grounds of majority of the marine organisms. They go to the mangrove areas at seasonal parts of the times of the year to breed, to spawn their eggs, and then reproduce, regenerate. So if we have the mangrove ecosystem wiped out, then we're going to lose lots of seafoods, lots of commercial fish, because they have no more breeding places.
Mangroves are very important from various respects. Biologically, with a high level of fauna biodiversity, as over 80% of commercial fisheries and other aquatic species spend most or part of their life cycle in the mangroves. Ecologically, they play a crucial role in fertilization, stabilization, filtration, regulation of microclimate, and acting as food chain support, and as nurseries for many fish and invertebrate species. And economically, they are important as they provide a wide range of timber and non-timber forest products that support rural economies and having high ecotourism potentials.
Mangroves, wherever they are still found, represent about 4% of the total forested areas of the landscape. And because of the noble roles they play in the environment, particularly being the barrier between the ocean and the hinterland, and the noble ecosystem services and the ecological functions they serve in the environment, and the way people have related with the mangroves over the years, to the extent that wherever mangroves occur, they are now on the brink of being lost forever. That is why we are calling people to raise their awareness, to raise the knowledge, and to also preserve the cultural values that people attribute to mangroves wherever they occur.
Despite their critical importance, mangroves are disappearing at an alarming rate around the world. Aquaculture, coastal development, rice and palm oil farming, and industrial activities are rapidly replacing these salt-tolerant trees and the ecosystems they support. Although there are a few plants where mangrove cover appears to be increasing, between 2001 and 2012, the world lost roughly 35 to 97 square miles of mangrove forest per year. That's a rate of loss that far exceeds the disappearing of tropical rainforests.
Over the last century, we've seen a deterioration of the environmental goods and services, which is the ECO's goods and services, because of our harmful production practices, irresponsible industrial activities. We are not saying in the green-blue space that there should be no industrialization. We are not saying there should be no drilling of oil. We need power, we need good houses, we need air conditions, so we need a good life. What we are saying is we should understand that the orphan called nature belongs to us all. So our practices should have an environmental face. If you are going to go out to drill an oil well, for example, and you're going to make $1 billion from that oil well, we should be at least compassionate enough to give 1% of $1 billion to the regeneration of the mangrove we destroyed. If you take a trip through the mangrove ecosystem in Nigeria, one of the major threats to the mangrove ecosystem is oil exploration activities, both legal and illegal. Legal from the government perspective, from the licensed oil operators, and then illegal from the illegal refineries we have, especially in the Niger Delta. The mangrove ecosystem is concentrated, especially in Delta, Rivers, and Bayelsa states, where we have it as wide as 50 kilometers. Now, that is unfortunately the oil and gas exploration hotbed in the country. So we have a lot of seismic work going on. They cut through swaths and kilometers of mangrove for oil exploration. They plant explosives, they destroy them day and night. Then that is just the beginning. When the production activities start, they lay thousands of kilometers of pipelines in the mangrove ecosystem. These pipelines extract oil, transport crude oil over decades. And then when that is done, the pipelines ought to be removed. The entire stretch needs to be regenerated and then replanted. But the case in Nigeria, due to our lax laws, non-enforced regulations, is such that we barely have any oil operator that can really say we've drilled oil, we've explored, we've finished exploring, and then we've restored. There is the law that says, the Egaspin, it says that all oil sites should be decommissioned. And then what we see across the oil producing parts of Nigeria is oil operators simply putting a cement platform around an oil site, and they call it decommission. In the true sense, the decommissioning of oil sites requires you to remove everything in the vicinity, remove everything you've put and then return those sites to almost as new as you met them. So what I'd rather say is we need to strike a balance. We need to search for energy, we need to drill for oil, we need to go for industrialization and urbanization, but we must have a compassionate, environmentally friendly approach to it, and we should have legislation that makes it compulsory.
The impact of oil on mangrove vegetation has been disastrous. Oil pollution in many intertidal creeks has left mangroves nurseries for fish and natural pollution filters, denuded of leaves and stems with roots coated in a layer of bitumen-type substance, sometimes 1 centimeter or more thick.
Serious distortion in what ought to be, particularly a mangrove. When we talk about mangrove, we talk about the data part of this country, owing to the oil exploration activities and co. But I know there's also meeting going on that to see whether they can allow it follow so that we can work on the regeneration of such mangrove.
A balance is the kind of thing we have here. This place was sandfilled to erect this center. They didn't take all of it, and to conserve it, because you cannot continue to deplete. The human cannot occupy every space in this world, or else it becomes useless. An environment like this has a great therapeutic value beyond wanting to expand.
Mangroves have been subjected to enormous pressures and threats within the past decades with great losses. For example, over 20 to 30% of the mangroves in the West and Central Africa have been lost in the past 25 years. This is through many factors, especially deforestation for fish smoking, urbanization, urban infrastructural development, salt and sand extraction, pollution from industries, agro-industrial chemicals, petroleum and gas exploration, absence of appropriate legislation, and the proliferation of invasive species, including the climate change effect accentuated by population growth.
It's affecting the mangrove very, very negatively. It's having a terrible impact on the mangroves, the population increase. And we just have to understand that this increasing population needs life support. The environment supplies the life support. Mangrove is part of that section of the environment that supplies critical life support. So when the population is exploding, we have to use our ingenuity to, yes, maybe utilize some areas of the mangrove for living space. But if we're going to sandfill any part of the mangrove, then we have to replicate the role that mangrove plays, which is drainage, which is purification of water. We have to try to replicate these things and just do it responsibly. The days of irresponsible development are over, because how can you have development when you're degrading your life support?
We should indeed be worried, because the largest chunk of where mangroves occur in Nigeria happen to be a very sensitive area where oil and gas explorative activities are currently taking place. We know since the advent of the oil in the 60s, Nigerian mangroves have not had it better because of the way the massive destruction, massive pollution going on there, and the continued degradation of the mangrove ecosystems. That is why, if care is not taken with the way and the rate at which we continue to lose our mangrove ecosystems, in the next couple of years, less than 2 decades from now, we stand the risk of losing the mangroves again. And let's not forget, our mangroves hold a clue to the livelihoods and the survival of the local communities around that place, and also is a collective natural resource that, if well managed and sustainably protected, is bound to actually raise the stake for us, is a way of generating internal revenue for the government, and is a way of actually protecting our cultural heritage that abound in all these mangrove ecosystems.
The mangrove ecosystem is confronted by diverse threats resulting from the dependence of rural communities around the Niger Delta on the forest resource as major source of livelihood. these threats include population growth, extensive clearing of the forest for firewood, agriculture, to permit the construction of navigational canals, villages, extraction of a number of non-timber forests for craft, oil exploration, deforestation, and commercial fish farming. The ocean is teeming with plants and animals willing and able to move beyond their native habitats, sometimes with the help of humans. Some of these invasive species are encroaching upon the habitats of mangroves. When the mangrove forest is removed, it is replaced by invasive species such as nipper palm, a fast colonizing exotic plant species that does not provide the extensive ecological services provided by the native mangroves. The threats to these forests are increasing, and the protective measures in place are solely inadequate.
We are living here today because persons who lived here before lived here responsibly, and that was why we are here. And so within a time frame of 9 to 10 years, we had what we call a fair attention to the mangrove forest, and 10 years later, the devastation is terrible, such that there must be some aspect, there must be a move towards what we call a propaganda towards restoration.
At a global scale, there are several groups that have committed to helping both restore and conserve the world's mangrove forests. The Mangrove Alliance is a group spearheaded by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, the Worldwide Fund, and the International Union for Observation of Nature that aims to increase global mangrove forests by 20% by 2030.
Nigeria is a signatory to Convention on Biodiversity, CITES, so that the unique resource, both plants and animal, that occur within this sensitive environment, particularly the mangrove ecosystems, can be protected. What we need is to sustain the tempo, step up the environmental education component, bring more people into it, recognize the rights of the local people, let them have their rights secured, bring them into the governance, planning, and execution. By that, with the involvement of the private public operators, we are sure that we have a future for the protection of our mangroves.
The Nigerian Conservation Foundation is also planning something.
What we know is that at independence, the total forest cover for Nigeria was a little above 40%, but as we speak, is between 4 to 7%. And there are conscious efforts by individuals, by governments, particularly by the Nigerian Conservation Foundation. We are rolling out a program, the Green Recovery Nigeria Initiative, which seeks to gradually return the forest cover of Nigeria to at least 25% that the Food and Agriculture Organization admonishes every country on the planet to seek to preserve and retain 25% of the total land area of the country's sovereignty under forest cover. Mangrove restoration and management is part of it. We are looking at setting up a mangrove or coastal protected area with a view to protecting the few remnants primary mangrove forests that remain. Not only that, those that are degraded, there are plans to consciously bring them back, restore. Because one thing we know about mangroves is that, as with other forest resources, is that they have the capacity and capability to restore when left undisturbed. We are pursuing both the mangrove restoration and the mangrove conservation within the context of the Green Recovery Nigeria Initiative.
The mangrove resources of Nigeria as a whole are undergoing a subtle decline. This is not a strange development, because any natural resource whose exploitation is unregulated is unlikely to be sustainable in the long run. Protection of remaining mangrove and restoration of destroyed or degraded areas through afforestation and reforestation is essential. Experts believe the health of the mangroves means wealth for the nation and its people.
We have to get it right, and I am very, very optimistic that we shall get it right, because this wonderful, miraculous environment, which is our life support, was inherited by us from our parents. who gave it to us in a fairly good condition because technology and irresponsible use of the fruits of that technology had not inundated so much negative impact on the environment. We are holding it in trust for our children. And what gives me optimism is that everybody I know love their children. So that life support system that we're holding in trust for them, we shall surely do the necessary things to make sure that it is maintained very well for them and given back to them in a good condition.
If we have state government partner with us that we should resuscitate the mangrove, it then means you have so many youth that you bring on board to work with you to re-establish that, and that will take them off the street, and there will be no idle hand to be engaged in any activities. The product of their activities, we bring back the ecosystem in that environment. It will also involve planting some trees that can suck up all the oil spill.
The degree of the threat posed by global climate change is uncertain. Rehabilitation of mangrove ecosystem is one management strategy with a dual win-win benefit. Apart from being a precautionary approach, it will improve the livelihood of local and immediate users of the resources, increase productivity, increase tourism revenues, sustain mangrove forestry, enhance sea defenses, and provide security from natural hazards. It will also save costs for the construction and maintenance of sea dikes. As climate change challenge continues to increase, communities in the Niger Delta region, as well as those along the entire coastline of Nigeria, are in danger of various natural disasters frequently reported in Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, seacoast of the United States, and other coastal states. Mangroves have the potentials to shield the coastal communities from the severe impact of these hazards. There have been warnings that efforts should be made urgently to protect and restore Nigeria's mangroves. The government has been advised to prepare a legislative base for mangrove protected areas by passing Mangrove Parks and Reserve Act as a first step towards mangrove management, conservation and rehabilitation. Financial support for conservation and rehabilitation should also be provided.
For any environment and the development activities to be sustainable in the future and to achieve its set target, you look at the policy. Most of our policies are very weak and obsolete. We need to go back to that. The institutions that are supposed to watch over this, keep all these things are non-existent. Where they are at best not adequately empowered to actually function the way they are, the local attitudes. Government needs to do more to that. Let's not forget we need to actually build people's capacities because they have an attachment with the natural resources that occur at their backyard. In this case, we are talking about mangroves. People obtain their livelihoods there. What are we doing to add value to that? Are we creating the necessary market links and chains for them to continue to remain there? Whereas we want to encourage people not to actually degrade the environment. What are we doing to build their capacities so that they continue to do that? It's a combination of factors integrated in nature. Bring people in. We must encourage public-private participation in efforts to restore, conserve, and protect the mangrove ecosystems in Nigeria and at the world over.
So far, no concrete attempts have been made to prevent further deterioration and no program for the restoration of Nigeria's mangrove ecosystems. Meanwhile, experts have said the protection and rehabilitation of the country's mangroves are indispensable given the obvious present and future ecological, social-economic, social-cultural, and scientific benefits. It's hard to overstate just how important mangroves can be to both the environment and economy. They're truly a super solution. Without them, we'll have more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, fewer fish and less food, and more damage from storms. That's our program for the week. Thank you for watching. Do check our YouTube channel, youtube.com/channelsweb. Please click the playlist menu and then click Earthfile for this episode and other episodes of the program. You can also follow me on Twitter. From me, Ayola Kasim, and the Earthfile crew here in Lagos. It's bye for now.